Hi, everyone. My name is Eli Khan. I am the Principal Product Manager for AWS Security Hub. Here to talk to you about one of Security Hub's new features, the Foundational Security Best Practice Standard that we recently rolled out for AWS Security Hub. In terms of agenda for today, I'm going to start off with giving an introduction to what AWS Security Hub is. I'm going to talk through some customer use cases. Then I'm going to dive into the Foundational Security Best Practice Standard, and finally leave you with some resources for how you can learn more. All right, first, intro to Security Hub. I'd like to start off with this quote. This quote is from Aristotle about 2,400 years ago. The quote is, "The whole is greater than the sum of the parts." This quote has been used in lots of different ways for systems engineering, human physiology, psychology, but ultimately it's about emergence, and I think it's really applicable to what we're trying to do with Security Hub. Folks oftentimes have dozens of different security tools. If you use them individually as point solutions, they're much less effective than when you use them in combination, and ultimately that's what we're trying to do with Security Hub. Uniting your security tools to give you visibility and to improve your security across your AWS workloads. Another concept or theory, folks may be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is a theory from 1943 about human motivations. The theory is based on hierarchical principles, and the 5 hierarchies in Maslow's original pyramid were around physiology, safety, love, belonging, and self-actualization. I adopted that concept here in terms of developing a cloud security hierarchy of needs. Once again, 5 levels. And Security Hub actually addresses each of these levels or needs. In terms of the bottom levels, visibility and secure configuration. These are really the core competencies of AWS Security Hub. We provide you visibility by bringing together all your alerts or findings, as we call them, across your various AWS security tools and third-party partner tools that are used to protect and defend your AWS workloads. We also help you securely configure your AWS services and resources. We do this through automated security checks, sort of like security hygiene checks, that assess whether your services and resources are properly configured. Next, auto remediation threat detection. So we do have capabilities here. I wouldn't call these our core focus, but we definitely have capabilities here. In terms of threat detection, we are integrating with threat detection services like Amazon Guard Duty, but we're also helping you get more value out of those services by aggregating those alerts with other types of threat detection alerts, showing you which resources have the highest density of different threat detections so that you can properly prioritize those resources for response and remediation. We do help you automatically or semi-automatically remediate various findings. We do that via our integration with CloudWatch Events, aka Event Bridge. So you can build out rules that automatically remediate various types of findings. Lastly, risk management, the top of the hierarchy, the top of the pyramid here. So ultimately, this is the end goal. Risk management is all about understanding your inherent, residual, and acceptable risks, making decisions about how much you want to buy down or transfer risk. We have a whole lot more coming in the future around risk management, but right now we're giving you the information that you need to make those risk trade-off decisions, an understanding of which accounts are most problematic, the types and the volume of different findings associated with those accounts so that you can better understand how much do you need to manage the risk for your different AWS accounts. All right, so now moving from the conceptual and theoretical to the more practical, what is AWS Security Hub? And a lot of folks in the industry like to think about security services or products from the perspective of well-defined industry product categories. We generally try to avoid buzzwords at Amazon and AWS when we're marketing our security services, but I do think it's a useful frame of reference to think about how Security Hub fits in these different security product categories. So if I was to describe Security Hub through the lens of product categories, I would consider it two parts: cloud security posture management, one part security information event management, and one part security orchestration automation response tool. So from the CSPM, cloud security posture management perspective, that's really the core of what we do, or one of the cores of what we do. We are doing these automated security checks, aka security hygiene checks, across your various services and resources to help you assess whether you've configured them in a secure way. That's really what CSPM tools do. So that's a core focus for us. Next, in terms of SIM tools, security information and event management tools, those tools are really about ingesting different types of log files, doing correlations, and aggregating those logs. Now, we're not ingesting lower-level, high-volume logs into Security Hub. So we're not ingesting VPC flow logs, DNS query logs, CloudTrail logs. But what we are ingesting are security alerts or findings. So we're ingesting the alerts or findings from GuardDuty, from Macie, from Inspector, from Firewall Manager, and from over 40 different third-party partner products. So we are ingesting those alerts, we're aggregating those alerts, and we're allowing you to do some basic correlations associated with those alerts. So there are some SIM-like capabilities. We wouldn't consider ourselves a full-blown replacement for a SIM. There's not a one-to-one comparison of capability, but definitely some similarities there. And then lastly, SOAR. So SOAR is a relatively new entry into the security product landscape. And we're not a full-blown SOAR either, but we do help you automatically respond and remediate to various findings that are ingested or created by Security Hub. And so we do this via our integration with CloudWatch Events, aka EventBridge, and we use CloudWatch Event Rules, or you can use CloudWatch Event Rules in combination with Lambda functions and step functions, automation documents, to automatically respond and remediate to different types of findings, similar to what you would do with a SOAR. All right, so given that as a backdrop, how does AWS Security Hub work? So as I was mentioned earlier, we're ingesting findings from various AWS services and third-party partner security products. So we're integrated with AWS services like GuardDuty, Macie, Inspector, Config, Firewall Manager, etc., and various different third-party partner products, roughly 4 dozen different third-party partner products. So folks like Checkpoint Dome9, Prisma from Palo Alto, Qualys, Rapid7, etc. So that's one big piece. We're ingesting those findings. We're actually automatically normalizing those alerts into a common data format. It's called the AWS Security Finding Format. So you don't have to do any parsing or normalization of those findings that are coming into Security Hub. They're already sent to us in a standardized data format. We call that the ASFF, the AWS Security Finding Format. And then we are also doing those automated security checks, those security hygiene checks. So we have coverage across dozens of AWS services. Under the covers, we're using a lot of config rules and some other types of checks to do those posture assessment. Ultimately, we're bringing all this data together, both your alerts from your different security products, plus these security checks to help you understand, are you secure in AWS? Now, we also have integration with a new service that just became generally available in March called Amazon Detective. So with Amazon Detective, you can do a one-click pivot from various types of findings and from various types of resources in AWS Security Hub, and then pivot seamlessly into Amazon Detective to do deeper dive investigations. So if you want to assess whether a particular type of guard duty finding is a true or false positive, you can pivot into detective. Detective has rich context. So they have the underlying VPC flow logs or CloudTrail logs associated with that guard duty finding so that you can really dive in and understand, is it a true or false positive? Next, we're not just a dashboard for this data. We also help you operationalize it. We do that once again via CloudWatch events, aka EventBridge. So you can use Lambda and automation documents and step functions to kick off either fully automated or semi-automated. By semi-automated, I mean a human analyst triggers it versus it triggering automatically whenever the finding appears. You can set it up either way, but those different functions can help you respond and remediate the various findings that come into Security Hub. We're also integrated with what we call various taking action partners. So we're integrated with on-call management systems like PagerDuty, ticketing systems like ServiceNow and Jira, chat systems like Slack. So those all have predefined CloudFormation templates to get you up and running quickly with those integrations. So that's Security Hub in a nutshell. I want to next dive a little bit deeper into use cases. So how are customers actually using Security Hub? And we have a lot of customers. We've actually become the fastest growing AWS security service. So adoption over the last year since we've gone generally available has been quite great. We've been really happy about that. And Security Hub is quickly becoming the centerpiece for many companies and organizations' AWS security strategy. Now, we are seeing customers use Security Hub in different ways. So in the first use case, you have a central security team, which could be your actual security operations center, or it could be a handful of AWS specialists, security specialists inside a cloud center of excellence. But in this use case, they're making heavy usage of the AWS Security Hub console. So they're logging into the console usually on a daily basis and looking at the findings via our various dashboards and finding tables and really assessing what are the things that they need to take care of that particular day. Now, they're still integrating Security Hub with their ticketing systems or their chat systems. Sometimes they're doing finding enrichment. I'll go more into that in just a bit. And they're also either integrating Security Hub with their commercial security orchestration automation response tools to do remediation. So folks like Palo Alto's XOR or Splunk's Phantom or Rapid7's Insight Connect, all of which we have integrations with, or they are building out their own remediation workflows using CloudWatch event rules plus Lambda functions and step functions. So that's obviously a very valid use case. But we also have customers who are making heavy usage of Security Hub, but by their central security team. But in this case, they're not really using the console. They're really using Security Hub as a router of information, typically to their SIM. So they've already standardized their processes and workflow around their SIM, but they're using Security Hub to more efficiently gather all their AWS-related alerts, push that to their SIM in a standardized format. Optimally, they are remediating some of these findings before they even get to the SIM. So they're reducing the volume of alerts, the volume of noise going into the SIM by automatically remediating some findings before they get there. And then the third use case, but one that I'm really excited about, is where the company or customer actually starts decentralizing security down to the AWS account owners. So they actually give access to Security Hub to their account owners. You can think about this as more of a DevSecOps style use case, where the account owners themselves, the builders, oftentimes application developers, are taking more proactive ownership over the security and compliance of their account. And in this case, the account owners are logging into Security Hub directly. They're only seeing the findings for their accounts The central security team can see all of the findings across all of the accounts. Usually they're not doing automated remediation at this level. Usually that is more centrally managed by the central security team. But they're still integrating Security Hub with their ticketing and chat systems so that those account owners can interact with that central security team. All right, let me now make that a little more concrete with an actual customer example. So this is a slide produced by actually one of our largest Security Hub customers and one of our largest AWS customers, a major financial service institution based here in the US. And they are using Security Hub as the centerpiece for their AWS security strategy and architecture. So they're aggregating all of their different alerts and findings into Security Hub. They're actually using both our out-of-the-box integrations and some custom integrations that they've built. So we do support custom integrations. Every product is enabled, every account that's enabled with Security Hub is provided a default product ARN. You can use that default product ARN or Amazon resource name to really ingest any type of finding as long as it's properly formatted. So they're getting all those findings into Security Hub. Next, they are using CloudWatch event rules and Lambda functions to actually do some further enrichment of those findings. So they're doing a number of different types of enrichment. If the finding doesn't have geolocation information, if it has an IP address but no geolocation information, they're using the MaxMind database to enrich that finding with geolocation information. For some findings, they've actually have some CloudWatch insights developed that can provide richer context into the findings. So they are adding the results of those insights into the finding using our customizable ASFF field. So there are fields in the AWS Security Finding format that you can customize and add your own data into. Next, they are actually storing their raw logs, like their VPC flow logs, their S3 data access plane logs in S3. And then they have prepackaged Athena queries that, based on the type of finding, are actually querying S3, grabbing the related log files and attaching them to the finding. So, for example, if you are dealing with a guard duty finding around unusual EC2 behavior, they're actually, based on the timestamp of that finding, grabbing the correlated VPC flow logs and adding that into the finding itself so that any investigators have that context when they start looking at that finding. And lastly, they have a deployment database, which is really like an asset inventory. So they have resource owner information in this database, and so for every finding that has a resource associated with it, they are figuring out who the resource owner is and adding that into the finding as well. So adding a bunch of context via these enrichment functions, via CloudWatch event rules. And by the way, one of the really cool things about this is that they are also really reducing the volume of data going into their SIEM. Because they're storing all the high volume raw logs in S3, they're not pushing all that data into their SIEM. It keeps their SIEM costs more reasonable as well. But so they've done that enrichment. Next, they're doing auto remediation. So they're actually going through and categorizing all of their findings as tier 1, 2, or 3 findings. And by that, I mean tier 1 or 2 findings are findings that they feel that they can automatically remediate, and it's low risk to automatically remediate them. There are some findings, based on the type of finding and the type of remediation that would be associated with that finding, or the type of account that's associated with, it'd be higher risk because maybe that account is hosting a mission critical or customer facing application. You don't want to start just shutting down EC2 instances because that could have negative impacts on that application. But there are some findings, like as example, like disabling CloudTrail logging. If that's ever detected, this customer knows that they just want to automatically turn that back on. regardless of what account it's in. And so they have an automated remediation that automatically turns CloudTrail logging back on for that account, resolves the finding in Security Hub, and sends out an SNS notification letting the security team know that, hey, this finding has occurred and has been remediated. I consider this setup really the pinnacle of how to use Security Hub. Ultimately, they're only now pushing their tier 3 findings into their SIEM, into their on-call management system, PagerDuty. And so it's a lot less noise going to the analysts. And any information, any alert that is going to the analyst has a whole bunch of additional context associated with it. So I think this is a really nice setup for how to use Security Hub. Going back to that previous slide, this is really use case 2. So they're not really using our console that much, but obviously getting a whole lot of value out of Security Hub. All right, so let's dive into foundational security best practices. So this is a new standard that we rolled out this past April. And the motivation for this standard is actually largely captured by one of the leadership talks that our Chief Information Security Officer gave at this past reInvent. So Steve Schmidt gave a talk, and one of the things he talked about were the top 10 security best practices. I'll play a clip from his talk just here for about a minute.
This slide. I know reInvent attendees love to take pictures of slides. This one I would encourage you to do so. This is one of those circumstances where if 6 people take a look at this and say, I need to do something differently in my own organization, I've succeeded in my talk today. Because I really want people to focus on those elements that I think give them the biggest bang for the buck and also represent the areas where people stub their toe the most in the security space here. All of these things are little individual components but add up to big value. Let's talk about them a little bit here. Accurate.
I'll pause it there. Now, if you want to hear the full talk, obviously these slides will be available. I certainly encourage that. But we actually had analysts go through all the major security incidents that our professional services team and security teams have responded to, and came up with this top 10 list based on analysis of the root causes of those incidents. And so we really wanted to take this list plus a number of other resources and come up with the vetted definition of how you should configure your various security services in AWS resources to align with security best practices. All right, so next, what is the foundational security best practice standard exactly? So it was obviously influenced by Steve Schmidt's talk, and what we've done is we started working through all of our major AWS services to come up with not only the security best practices for each of those services, but the automated security checks that can help you assess in an automated way whether you're aligning to those security best practices. So we rolled this out in April. So far, we've covered 18 services, 15 resources, and have 31 controls, aka those automated security checks that run automatically. Really, no configuration at all is enabled. It's quite easy to set up. In fact, when you enable Security Hub in a new account, this standard and these checks are automatically turned on. Now, obviously, you can turn those off, but they're automatically turned on. So literally no configuration is needed. Whenever you turn on Security Hub, this starts running immediately, and you'll start seeing results within an hour. I think it's really interesting in terms of how we built the foundational security best practice standard. We put a lot of thoughts into what these controls should be, and there are a number of inputs. So we use that top 10 list from Steve Schmidt's reInvent talk. We look at any existing config rules that are out there, There's over 100 of those that are available. Many of our services have public documentation in their public docs about what are the security best practices. Now, not all of those are automatable in terms of a security check, but we're certainly using those as well to inform what we're coming up with. And then we're also looking at other AWS services. So Trusted Advisor has 17 automated security checks. So certainly we're covering those, or at least most of them so far. And then there's also the AWS well-architected tool, which walks you through at a high level the security best practices for different types of workloads. All of those are going into input as inputs. And then what we're doing is we're working through each of our major AWS services, defining the key security best practices for that service. To make sure that we have good coverage of security best practices, we're actually using the NIST cybersecurity framework of identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, and working through each of those major functions and making sure we have coverage across those functions in terms of our security best practices for each service. Then we go through a series of reviews. So we have our own security engineers on the Security Hub team that are initially doing this work. Then we have a larger security community, really a committee that we review these with. So these are experts from our professional services team, from our internal AWS IT security team, and from our other security services. And then lastly, we're reviewing them with the service team themselves. And so these are going through a lot of vetting before we roll them out as a blessed security best practice that really should be a no-brainer to turn on and use for a service that you're engaged with. Lastly, we're starting to now release new security best practices or controls on a monthly basis. So we have 31 now. You'll see next month. You'll see another 10 or so, and so on. So there'll always be a constant flow of these as we've gotten this process now humming. So, how does the foundational security best practice standard work? Well, it's really easy. Literally, turn on Security Hub and it starts working. And we start producing these automated security checks for any resources that you have that are in scope. There is a prerequisite, so most of these automated security checks that we're doing do rely on config rules. So you do need to turn on config recorder in the account where Security Hub is enabling. But besides that, really no configuration needed. And we are adding some additional things beyond what you might see in just the config rules. For every one of these controls that we're producing, we are also identifying remediation actions. So you can click through in the console and get detailed step-by-step ways how to remediate each of these findings. So yeah, in terms of learning more, going back to our friend Aristotle, so there's lots of ways to learn more. Obviously, the easiest way to learn more is using our 30-day free trial. So there's a no-risk 30-day free trial that you can use to get started with Security Hub. We actually also have a cost calculator as part of that to give you a feel of how much it'll cost post the free trial. But Security Hub has been priced to really be very low cost. It should be a no-brainer to turn on across all your accounts and regions. We've got over 4 dozen partners that are integrated with Security Hub. And we've got some really good blogs and videos. The best practice blog lays out 9 best practices for getting started with Security Hub. The remediation blog actually has a bunch of remediation content that you can use with CloudWatch event rules to remediate some of our automated security checks. And if you want to see a full demo, I would check out the Reinforced demo. That's probably the best one. It goes in deep dive, including how to build out those remediation workflows. Also, quick plug for our training and certification classes. We also have some really good content in here around Security Hub, along with our other security services. And if you're interested in learning more, or if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. LinkedIn or Twitter is best, so hope to hear from you there. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.